Sir, you are host now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Firoz. Okay, so today we are going to do the last of the European diasporas. In fact, this whole block on global diasporas case studies will come to an end today, and next week onwards, we are progressing back to front. So next week we are going to start with the new block, which is the transnationalism, diaspora, and citizenship. In fact, when we started talking about these diaspora studies and these units, we did bring out a lot of those concepts in terms of belonging, in terms of citizenship, in terms of identity. We will do it in a structured fashion again. I'll try and club. If you notice, I do change content, the content that you have got. If I feel there is something more to add in terms of getting a better overview or a different perspective, I add that. And largely, I take the same framework, and largely most of the templates are the same. And obviously, because we are talking about diaspora migration, a lot of things, repeat. However, life itself is a certain set of repetitions. A lot of stories are repeated in our life. A lot of stories are of our lives, are stories of other people's lives. That's the story of human life. Any question that you have before we start? You can raise, you can either, and again the modality is the same. You can stop me at any moment of time to ask a question, to add something, or to put in a different perspective. If there is none, let's start with the Spanish and the Portuguese diaspora. And the reason why the Spanish and the Portuguese diaspora has been clubbed together is because Spain and Portugal come together in what is called the Iberian Peninsula. So let's look at this. So again, the objective: historical context, features of contemporary Spanish and Portuguese diaspora, more often the same template that I'm using across. Geography of the Iberian Peninsula. So Spain and Portugal come under what is this is the Iberian Peninsula. So actually a part of France also comes in the Iberian Peninsula, but this is largely Spain and Portugal. Why is it called the Iberian Peninsula? Because the word comes from Latin, Iberian or something, Latin and Greek. This was right from the Roman Empire. And in fact, if you are interested in the history of Spain and Portugal or the Iberian Peninsula, you must go into the history of the peninsula, how movements have happened, and remember, this is very close to North Africa. So, studying the history of the world and history of movement of religions, communities, ethnic communities, gets a sense of how things happen how things are today and how they happened. So, a lot of things get cleared with history. The history of Spain and Portugal began with the Romans introducing Latin to the peninsula during their conquest in 3rd century BC. So it's a long history. Was subject to several German invasions. In fact, there is a river called Eros, I think, who will translated also comes into that. So the peninsula is this, and the southern France, and there is a mountain out here. What is that mountain? It starts with P. I forget the name. There is a mountain range out there, and that's how the peninsula is determined. Subject to several Germanic invasions as the Roman Empire declined, invasions by Arabic speaking moves from North Africa. So remember, this is North Africa. This is North Africa. Algeria, Morocco, this is North Africa. So it's whatever distance it is On the map, you can't. So, modern day Portugal and Spain, development of Portuguese in Spain, western part of mainland Europe. Yeah, the Pyrenees mountain, continent by the Pyrenees mountain range. Spain pioneered the colonization of America, followed by the great. In fact, interestingly, Christopher Columbus, who was an Italian explorer, actually explored the Newfoundland using a Spanish armada or a Spanish ship or a Spanish expedition. So that is again a view of the Iberian Peninsula, Portugal, Spain, and you see these are all smaller countries. History starts with the Romans, 3rd century, by Arabic-speaking Moors from North Africa, Portuguese and Spanish. In fact, in 1300 or something, there was a Jewish genocide in Spain. There has been a lot of movements in terms of kingdoms, in terms of empires, and so on and so forth. The superior navigating skills of the Portuguese enabled them to build the world's largest commercial and maritime empire, beginning 16th century. It stretched from South America to Far East as well as African and Indian coast. So it was actually the Portuguese which started off this commercial and maritime empire, which was followed by the Dutch, the British, the French, the German, the Italians, and that's how the colonization happened. The Portuguese were able to seize control of majority of European spice trade, which has been previously dominated by. Remember when we were talking about the Italian diaspora? I told you about before Italy's unification in 1871. There were these two maritime cities of Genoa and Venice, and and Venice was dominating the spice trade through Alexandria and Damascus. Trade with Africa, India, and Persian Gulf, they were able to replace and initially it started with Arabs. Arabs were the initial traders. In fact, that is how a lot of Arab traders came via the Kerala route. So, in fact, when I was writing this course on the spread of Islam in the Indian subcontinent, more often than not, there was this skewed view that it came via the north when Muhammad bin Qasim came to Sindh and then came down, whereas the Arab traders were there already in the south, and that's how they came up. By controlling trade with Africa, India, and Persian Gulf, they were able to replace the Arab intermediaries. Unable to maintain its naval superiority, was forced to cede territory to the ambitious Dutch and British merchants. So it's actually the Portuguese who started it. And that's how the Portuguese only were confined in India to Goa. This is the Spanish and the Portuguese colonial empire in 16th century. So if you see, the yellow part is Portuguese and the pink or the reddish part is Spain. And if you see the whole, all this is yellow. And if you see even on the western coast, it is all yellow. These were all Portuguese trading posts. And finally, they were all taken over by the British and the Dutch and the French and Portugal or Portuguese were confined to just this Goa. And the same with here, the South America. In fact, the Spain came first to America, and look at this. These were also Spanish, occupation. This is the 16th century. So let's look at the Portuguese, start with the Portuguese diaspora, traditional country of emigration with multi-generational diaspora spread over. So one supposedly myth, a lot of times, for a lay person, there is this myth that it's just the underdeveloped countries or the global south which are illegal, which are doing immigration. A lot of them are illegal immigrants. They are moving or they are migrating. We've also seen now over the last few weeks in the units that we have done, the Europeans are immigrating themselves. They are looking at, there is poverty, there are various issues, and they are looking at aspirational migration. So essentially, as I keep saying, and I repeat it again, the story of the story of humankind is a story of migration. We keep migration. In fact, in your assignment, there is this question of globalization and nationalization. And I said these contradictory movements are they are negotiating with each other. I won't say they are at war. It's like science and religion. They are negotiating with each other for every scientific achievement which happens, which says that the power of seeing and the power of reason, there is a religion argument which talks about faith, which talks about a larger force, and this pretty much negotiation has happened throughout history. In fact, every time science was able to discover something, there were more questions than answers, and religion filled up the void in trying to answer questions which had no answers in science. So, and the similar way, as we go more globalized, we are more interconnected. We have real-time communication. We have real-time, seeing what's happening. Today, sitting in India, I am able to see what's happening in the world. I'm able to have a real-time video coming on my stream telling me what are the events which are happening. We are still, all nations are talking about nationalism. There is this movement to try and ban immigrants, stop immigrants, or talk ill of immigrants, and brand them as illegal. So one of the colonials period's largest empire extended widely through the world, emphasis on Latin America and Southeast Asia. These populations have become deeply assimilated over time and are distinct from more recent Portuguese diaspora. So even people in Goa who would be the Portuguese diaspora, you wouldn't find out if they are Portuguese or they are Indian. They will be more Indian than the Portuguese. A lot of them would have gone back. So, in fact, I found a website which is the World Portuguese Network. As I said, today with global connectivity and the internet, diaspora mobilization becomes much easier. But again, as I said, diaspora does not come with any pre-existing clauses. Just because you have migrated does not make you automatically a diaspora. Diaspora mobilization happens. And also, because today internet and social media connects real time, the home and host connect onto each other, in fact converge. Whatever is happening at home affects the host. Whatever affects is happening with the host affects the home. Everything is converged. Brazil is home to the largest Portuguese population and a diverse cultural heritage, assumed as much as 85 million of Portuguese ancestry, though in the official count, it is not so much. Portuguese has a sizable population in France, US, Venezuela, Canada, South Africa, and United Kingdom. Last 50 years, especially after the 74 revolution, it developed a welfare state that responds to the needs of its residents. Also, we have seen, interestingly, that in the European diaspora, each country or each nation that we looked at, there was a large push from the government or the state towards its immigrant. And we had it, there was very little focus on remittances, except the Italian diaspora, where we saw remittances, the connections were much deeper. The remittance was a major factor. And in all European states that we are seeing, they mention the fact of the welfare state. Uniform welfare system based on jus soli, born on the soil, and deterritorialized jus sanguine, where one of the parents is a Portuguese regime. So there were multiple waves of Portuguese migration. First wave from 19th century to 60s went to Brazil, US, accounted for about 68% or 18% of those who left Portugal. Second migration lasted from 60s to the 70s, directed towards industrialized nations in northern and central Europe, mainly France and Germany. And the interesting part in this is the fact that France, Germany, and Britain were the largest, or Central and Western Europe was the largest sufferer after World War II. But the fact that they got back was an impressive achievement. After this date, after 70s, Portuguese immigration was marked by a period of contraction, expansion, and then intensification from the mid 2000 onwards. This is a study by Marquis and Goes. Recent years, Portuguese immigration has both risen substantially and diversified its range of destination. There are movements toward traditional destinations along with migration to new territories. Typically, today, migrations from across the world, irrespective of nationalism, ban the immigrants, has only increased. In fact, a recent study talked about how many people from India have left their citizenship. So people are continuously moving for better opportunities, for aspirations, for a better climate, and so on and so forth. And obviously, the climate change is definitely hitting the world with a lot of climate refugees happening. We are not still talking enough about it, but they're still happening. Older migratory flows were normally less visible in current statistics. So current statistics talks about 2 to 48 million, which and this is typically the case with again all diasporas, because diasporas throughout the history of humankind, migrations through the history of humankind, there are many. A lot of the communities have got assimilated. A lot of communities or people do not want to stay their country of origin less they get targeted. So they will continue to for example, Indians in various countries would prefer to call themselves from the countries like South Africa, Suriname, Guyana, etc., rather than call themselves from India. Born abroad with at least one Portuguese ascendant in the second degree, who has not lost citizenship, are entitled to Portuguese. So that is the reason why a lot of people from Goa were able to emigrate back to Portugal by taking Portuguese citizenship, because Portuguese laws talks about jus sanguinis, so you can get Portuguese citizenship. Portugal has sought to maintain contact with its citizens abroad, with immigrants have been mainly limited to cultural and political dimensions and trace a predominantly unidirectional relationship from state to the citizen. This is again that we have seen predominantly in the European diaspora, where the state is pushing to keep in contact. So in terms of infrastructure, there is no ministry in Portugal that acknowledge core mission to deal with diaspora. There's only a General Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Secretary of State for Communities Abroad. There's a Director General of Consular Affairs and Portuguese communities, and a Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Its functions includes coordination and implementation of policy to support immigration in Portuguese community. So there is no separate ministry that we see. Consular service focus mainly on the defense of rights of the interests of Portuguese state and all citizens. Action is comprehensive in terms of matter, electoral census, identification cards, issues related to civil and criminal registration. Three areas: cultural and associative movements, social and legal. And support also is not as as what we saw in the Italian government and the diaspora. At the regional level, the autonomous region of Azores. So there is this autonomous region which is there very close to, it's about 100 kilometers from Morocco, which is the Azores. I think I'm getting the name right. Azores have a regional directorate of communities that has its functions. So because this is an autonomous region, it's got a regional level. Otherwise, Portugal does not have a regional setup. Encourage civil and political participation in society, because this is an autonomous region. So in 2018, the Portuguese consular network supposed to be 345, but these are there are how this is distinguished. You can just go and read on that. Different continent is variable. Type of consular structure is geographical diverse. Largest number are in countries which are traditionally countries of Portuguese immigrants like Brazil, US, and France. Otherwise, the rest of the countries, for example, the Portuguese consulate in India caters to India, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka, if I'm not wrong. You can check it out. So, so they don't have individual consulate in each of these countries, but all these countries in the SAARC region come to India in terms of any work. In 1980, government created Council of Portuguese Community as a form to maintain an institutional dialogue with citizens abroad, mainly a consultative one, which we have seen in a lot of countries. Councils are consultative, was interrupted between 88 and 96. Subsequently broadened its scope, responsible for issuing opinions on drafts of law and other projects of legislation and administrative act, international agreements. The council also provides information and issue options on matter relevant to residents abroad, uh, areas of immigration, Portuguese formulate proposals. So the besides the consultative, now the area is broadened. It does make sense to have councils like this, because then the flow of information can be faster and accurate, rather than governments trying to second guess as to what immigrants desire or need. Parties that are currently present in parliament do not have any special department. So again, we've seen in the European states, some states, the political parties replicate organizations with the immigrants. Some states do not. By far, most European states look at immigrant representation. Again, the fact is, it's not that just because the immigrants have, or the diasporas have a right to vote, are they actively engaged with the government? There are, in fact, when I was reading, the kind of engagement is diverse. The younger generation does not engage as much as the older generation, which is natural, because the younger generation, especially the second generation or the third generation, would be more assimilated with the host nation rather than looking at the host nation. They regularly elect 4 deputies, 2 extraterritorial electoral districts, one in Europe and the other outside, something similar to other European countries. There has been some strategic plan for migrants from 2015-20. I am not sure whether this plan has been extended or a new plan has come in. Are aiming primarily at encouraging, monitoring, and supporting the return to Portugal. So there is a clear-cut vision as to what these policies are supposed to do. Also foresees a set of measures intended to strengthen the link between citizens abroad and their homeland. And in fact, internet and social media becomes a great tool today for connection of homeland with their diasporas. Concerns voting right, to which state has sought to incorporate politically its citizens living abroad. Most European states do that. Election for legislative assembly, part of is guaranteed, 76, irrespective of the year spent abroad. Portuguese enrolled in electoral census abroad can vote by correspondence. So you need to, get yourself enrolled, and then you can vote. 2 electoral districts, one is Europe and the one is the rest of the world, is also possible by participation in referendum. And because Portugal and Spain are both a part of EU referendums, people can vote. The diasporas can vote. So let's move on to the Spanish. Spain treats its diaspora a little different than Portugal. Spanish residents, a total about 2.4 million Spanish citizens, irrespective of the fact, again, a lot of Spanish people who moved since the 16th century have have assimilated. The older people do not constitute or do not come in the counting for the diasporas. Diasporas are more recent. More than 1 century of emigration. So obviously, there should be more, because a lot of people intermarried, then assimilated in the host countries. Spanish exiles of civil war, early Francosium, which had retained. So France was a dictatorship for some time. Spaniards who emigrated mostly to other countries during the 50s and 60s, seeking higher standards of living. So poverty does make a sense in Europe. And new immigrants that move abroad in the aftermath of the financial crisis in 2008. So that is that. And if you remember, when we were doing the British diaspora and I think the German diaspora, there was this mention about the fact that a lot of older citizens moved to the southern Europe to spend their retirement. So obviously, the cost of living is cheaper in southern Europe, which is Spain and Portugal, rather than up north. So, in the infrastructure department, there are two ministerial departments. First, within Ministry of Foreign Affairs, European Union and Cooperation, there's a Director General for Spaniards Abroad and Consular and Migratory Affairs. There's a Ministry of Employment, Migration and Social Security. The State Secretary for Migration is in charge of developing policy on immigration, immigrant integration, and emigration. So you see, all of them are together, and inevitably makes a lot of sense, because once you have these kind of a policies, and remember, all these policies are also driven down by the European Union. A large part of the overall vision is given by the European Union, and then individual states then follow suit. Consular network comprises of 179 consular missions in 96 countries. As opposed to other countries with extensive consular networks, Spain does not have a law on consular protection. So there is no consular protection, but rather a series of regulations that define the contours of service. So each country, if you see, has a unique, understanding and a unique way they operate. As I said, a lot of countries work on their DNA in terms of historically what happened. So when we were looking at the Italian diaspora, Italians historically have been taking care of their immigrants. Spain has created an immigrant consultative body. So there are two consultative bodies at two levels. Consulate level, there's a Council of Spanish Residents Abroad, and at the national level with the General Council of Spanish Citizens Abroad. Main function to advise the director of the consular mission on issuing concerns of Spanish community in the consular demarcation. So at the consular level, it suggests. So there's a lot of lobbying which these diasporas can do. Most of the mainstream Spanish party, including nationals abroad within the organic structure. Unlike Portugal, Spanish parties have, their chapters abroad. At the subnational level, regional governments tend to focus on immigration issues rather than engagement policy. This also reflects in their infrastructure. And please also understand, Spain also has its own, domestic issues. Recently, as late as 2018, there was this move for separation of one particular area, which is up north, having Barcelona. They wanted a separate autonomous entities. It didn't happen. So key engagement policies. Spanish immigration has been described as horizontal. There is not a catch-all legal text that regulates all aspects of immigration policy. Set of laws, royal decrees, and administrative orders over the last 30 years. Quite a comprehensive regulation of relationship between the Spanish state and the nationals abroad. Constitution, for instance, established that the state shall pay particular attention to safeguarding the economic and social rights of Spanish workers abroad and shall direct its policy towards their return. So just like Portugal also the larger vision was for getting the emigrants returned back. Based on Article 2 of Royal Decree, Spaniards abroad must register in the Consulate General. Nevertheless, not complying does not impair their right. Now, that becomes a very important point because that gives a sense of identity, a sense of belonging, in fact. So, you don't need to register to be called one. That corresponds to all Spaniards abroad can vote in national and regional elections, including elections for national upper and lower house, legislative chambers, national and regional referendums, as well as European parliaments. So the European Parliament becomes an additional political engagement. Seem to focus on economic immigrant policies beyond taxation regime. So you notice nowhere does remittances come either in Portugal or in Spain, meant to avoid double taxation, also possibly because of the fact that a lot of these European states there are no extended families except for Italy is primarily an Asian kind of an affair. And of course, we see in Africa also, Africa being extremely poor. When migration happens, those migrants do remit to their families back home. Europe, we are seeing that the families are much more nuclear, and when they move, there is nothing to remit back. Subsidized provision to aid returnees in the situation of extraordinary necessity. So their focus is on getting people to come back. Spain, and when we look at the cultural and education policy, have created a class of Spanish language and cultural programs. Unlike French, German, they are not focusing on people outside their own citizens who have migrated. Children of Spanish immigrants to maintain and develop their Spanish language skill as well as teach Spanish culture. Organized by Ministry of Education. Since 1993, Ministry also has network centers abroad that offer primary and secondary skill according to Spanish educational curriculum. So directly at the Spanish diaspora or nationals abroad. In terms of consular protection, order of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, framework of consular protection and assistance is not a legal right. Framework includes several aid modalities: repatriation, evacuation, subsistence allowance, incarcerated abroad, allowance for legal aid, allowance for burial and cremation, etc., etc. So Spain grants social protection to immigrants in some of the 5 core policy areas. This is more a sense of for you to know that they do approach to issue of immigrant social protection also shaped by European Union's framework. So as I said, European Union by far for Europe frames the larger policy vision or the larger framework in which the member states need to operate. Then the states, looking at the larger vision, pick up and look at it from their nation-oriented thing. So for example, they have a bilateral agreement and multilateral agreements, Ibero-American Social Security Agreement signed by Spain, Portugal, and 13 Latin American countries to cover migrants' rights regarding pensions, work accidents, illness, disability due to work-related. We've seen that in Italy also. Bilateral agreements was signed. Turkey, if you remember, in Western Asia, we saw Turkey signing that with Germany. Otherwise, we didn't come across too many of these agreements in terms of protecting the workers in countries for Asian and African countries. Generally implemented abroad based on collaboration of social security institutions located in Spain and so-called Department of Employment and Social Security. So let's sum up. Iberian Peninsula includes modern-day Portugal and Spain, necessitated the development of Portuguese and Spanish concurrently and in relative isolation, superior navigation skills of Portuguese. So they were the first of the block in terms of having a large shipping assembly of merchants, and they went about setting up trading posts across the world, South America, Asia. Then they, because of rise of Dutch, British, French, they had to cede its territory, smaller country. Portuguese emigration has both risen substantially and diversified its range of destination. Spain, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, European Union and Cooperation, the Director General for Spaniards Abroad and Consular and Migratory Affairs, Ministry of Employment. So these are the government ministries. Does not seem to focus on economic immigrant policy beyond taxation, meant to avoid double taxation. There are two references I picked up: Portugal exploration and Spanish conquest, retrieved from Lumen Learning, and all these things are there in your course material. And there are others given, though a lot of things I thought were a little superfluous with the sense of this particular unit, but nevertheless you can do a little search, Google search, and find out. Okay, any questions? Let me put the video on. Hi. There is an iPhone which is logged in. I would really request if you can put your name, rename that to some name rather than iPhone. Any questions? Aisha, how are you? Any questions?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well.
Yes. No questions today.
I finally am able to pronounce your name.
Yeah, you got it right.
Yeah, normally it happens with me when I, in big classes, somehow it takes me a little time, but then I'm able to identify names and faces. Though I teach at quite a few places, but I'm able to still get the names. I might forget the content, but I remember names. Okay, any questions? Who's this iPhone? Oh, Yuvraj. Thank you, Yuvraj. I see you as a new.
Thank you very much.
I see you as a new student. There is an FIFA. I wonder how you pronounce it. FIFA?
Hello, sir.
Hi. Do you pronounce your name as FIFA, or is there a better pronunciation?
It's Afifa.
Afifa. Okay. What does that mean? What does that mean? That's an interesting name.
It has Arabic meaning.
I know it's Arabic, but what does it mean?
It means worshipper.
It means
Worshipper.
worshipper. Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. So Afifa is a new person I can see. I had not seen her name before. Welcome to the class, Afifa. Welcome to the class, Yuvraj. Bidisha, I'm seeing you for the first time. Okay.
Sir, good afternoon. I have been attending since 1 month,
Sorry.
sir. I'm not a newcomer to the class, sir.
Bidisha. Yuvraj. Okay, guys. Hang on, my internet is getting unstable. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Guys, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I am hearing.
Okay. It suddenly gave a message. My internet was unstable, so I switched off my video. Oh, sorry, Yuvraj. I didn't notice. Maybe okay, because your iPhone was coming, so I would see an iPhone logging in. And, the way technology is moving, I would be surprised that devices suddenly log in and take notes of the class.
It's okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir. I've been attending since 1.5 months, sir.
Wonderful,
classes, sir.
Wonderful.
Okay,
how are you? How are you, Swadesh? How's life?
Yeah, sir. Everything all right.
Okay, very good. Kangat, how are you doing?
Now I'm going to look our results.
Sorry?
I'm contesting candidate from Telangana.
You are? Which constituency?
Nirmal.
Okay, all the best for tomorrow. And in case Swadesh goes over the tape, we have an MLA as a person known. All the best, Swadesh.
I'm contesting especially cause of the government of Telangana and government of India not taking agenda of the migrant workers' welfare and rights. They are not
Yes.
protecting.
Yes.
And even so they are not participating in safe, orderly, regular migration. That is the main agenda I'm contesting in this assembly elections.
Wonderful. So you have a lot of people in that assembly constituency who are migrants?
Yeah, yes. This is a migrant-prone area,
Okay.
combined
Okay.
Adilabad district
Okay.
and Nizamabad
Adilabad.
and
Okay.
Karimnagar. Our
Okay.
constituency will come under Adilabad district, Telangana
Okay.
state.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, all the best, and I will look out for your constituency and see what the result is, and wish you all the best.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Any questions? So what we will do is next week onwards, next Saturday onwards, we'll start on the block on transnationalism, diaspora, and citizenship. As I said, we are going backward. We did. Let me switch on the video. So we did what is happening? Okay. So we did Indian diasporas. We came to global case diasporas case study, and we are going backwards onto the blocks. We could typically start with the theory and then go on to case studies. Or a lot of times when you look at the case studies, then you can relate to the theory. Sometimes doing the theory first becomes a little boring in the sense because live case examples do not come. But now we have done the live case examples, and all of you have a certain perspective in terms of dealing with things. For example, what Dave Pragya was talking last time about academics and scholarship, there are multiple perspectives, and there is never a deterministic way we do it. Whenever we try and do it in a deterministic way, there is some what we say an agenda, or we want to narrow our focus, which should typically not be the case of scholarly or academic pursuits. Unless you are theorizing or you are dealing, we also know that research can have different outcomes based on the data that we choose, the communities that we choose, how we tend to look. These are all POVs or point of view specific. So any research can have multiple objectives. So, for example, in journalism, a lot of people keep talking about objectivity. Human beings are not objective, they are subjective. Objectivity is maintained out of using certain tools. However, we are still subjective. So everything becomes a point of view. So we don't, in academics and scholarship, don't look at good, bad, right, wrong. These are outcomes based on certain inputs and so on and so forth. Any questions? Sada sir, also send me. I hope you have seen your assignments that you need to do. Whatever assignments that you need to do, always you can when you are doing your assignments. I saw those assignments. There is no harm in using the internet in trying to find out. Always hang on. My internet is showing unstable. Let me switch off my video. Whenever you are using internet to do research on your assignments, please cross verify. Internet is a great medium, but at the same time, it's a very unreliable medium in the sense people can choreograph information, wrong information can come in. In case you are using artificial AI apps like ChatGPT gives erroneous results. Always cross-check and cross-verify. Because remember, the word they are using is artificial intelligence. Unfortunately, artificial intelligence is no word. It's a marketing term. It is actually applied statistics in terms of certain amount of data which is fed in. So if a wrong data has been fed in, the outcome will be wrong. In spite of the fact how deterministic the output comes, how authorship or editorially it is written, it can be wrong data. So please cross check and cross verify in case any time you need to consult. One great way is to take help from each other. You can always, as I said, write me a mail. I'm sharing my mail ID. I'm also sharing my mobile number. I'm not on WhatsApp. I'm only on Telegram. Uh, it's always, and in academics and scholarship, the best way to read or best way to get perspectives is talking to each other, discussing people. It is always faster and you get multiple perspectives. It's always a good thing. Yeah. So if there are no further questions, we can call it a day. You have a wonderful week for your elections, and we'll catch next Saturday, and we'll start with a block on transnationalism, diaspora, and citizenship. Okay, guys.
Okay.